Hello everyone, my name is Wenzhen. I have to say it's really nervous to speak in front of the camera. I'm from KDDI Research, the research institute of KDDI Group, one of the major mobile phone carrier in Japan. Our research team conduct research on the field of persuasive technology in the domain of smart city, and today I'm really happy to have a chance to introduce the results of the recent research project, and the paper is entitled Does Traffic Information Provided by Smartphones Increase Detour Behavior? There are two parts of today's presentation. In the first 3 minutes, I will briefly introduce the key points of today's presentation, such as the backgrounds, the goal of the persuasion, the experiment flow, the conclusion, and novelty. After that, I will provide a detailed introduction with the part of literature and a theoretical framework, method, results, discussion, and conclusion, just like a typical conference presentation. Let's start with part A. There is a national summer holiday in Japan in August that many citizens choose to travel with their families during that period all around the country, and a great percentage of the users choose to travel by car, which makes the highway in Japan very crowded during that period. To resolve this social problem, that we KDDI collaborate with a major highway company Nexco to conduct a digital field experiment to reduce congestion of the highway in eastern Japan. And our strategy is to create psychological intervention materials, and we put them into traffic information and distribute this information through a smartphone to persuade potential user of Tohoku Highway, the purple one, to switch their route to the Joban Highway, the navy one. Specifically, we conducted two sets of experiments, the longitudinal online survey and the digital field experiment, to examine the influence of the emotional persuasive strategy on changing the detour intention and the behavior. We create 4 kinds of traffic information with or without psychological intervention materials that we call this information as landing page. We distribute the landing page randomly to our participants. After that, we took survey and also checked the location information of the participants to check whether they changed their mind or changed their route after they checking the LPs. The conclusion is that intervention with emotional priming significantly increases detour intention and has the potential to increase detour behavior. And the effects of emotional intervention varies depending on different user attributes. There are 2 kinds of novelty of the present research I would like to emphasize. The first one is we took the first step to examine the psychological theory, the emotional persuasive strategy in the domain of traffic. And also we applied insights of the laboratory experiment to real society surveys. Another one is that we applied a mixed method in this research, that we combine 2 major methods in social science, the longitudinal survey and the field experiment together to examine the effects of the theory. Thanks to the method that we are able to collect both subjective data and objective data to guarantee the reliability of our findings. In the following section, I'm going to provide a detailed introduction of this paper. And the first slide shows the theoretical framework under which we decide a strategy of the persuasion, that we mainly focus on 2 items, the intrinsic motivation and emotional persuasive strategy. Our basic idea is that we provide emotional priming to activate the user's feeling of empathy to themselves and their families, and we think it might be one of the intrinsic motivation that encourage people to take a detour. I'm going to provide some detailed introduction of the two theory in the following slides. The first one is the intrinsic motivation, that as we all know, there are two motivations that drives people to formulate and change a particular behavior. Those are extrinsic motivation that emphasize the effects of rewards or punishment. And the second one is intrinsic motivation that emphasize the effects of inner demand. And after a review of the behavior change study in traffic domain, we found most of the past study were in the EM approach, which means scholars provide like rewards to encourage people to take a detour. However, according to some previous studies, that there are some limitations of the EM approach, that the effects are unsustainable, unstable, or have some side effects. So based on this information, we draw the first hypothesis that the traffic information create as a part of intrinsic motivation approach increase participants' detour intention. And the second theory is the emotional persuasive strategy, that according to psychological research, that there are two routes of persuasion: the logical persuasive strategy and emotional persuasive strategy. The first one, such as when a salesman sells a car to a customer, he or she might use the strategy of persuasion that provide a lot of professional data to show how good a car is. And another strategy is that they just need to tell a story about how cool the car is. And a second strategy is always used by web or TV commercials because the effects are very fast and versatile. So according to this information, we draw the second hypothesis that the emotional priming might increase the participant detour intention and behavior. And also we draw a research question to see what kind of users attribute might be more effective to use the emotional programming. In the two following slides, I'm going to introduce the method of the study. We conduct two sets of experiments, the online survey experiment and a digital field experiment, at the same time in August 2019. And in the first week, we recruited and targeted participants for the study. We invited users who meet the requirements to the study. And the requirements for the online survey experiments are people who are active users of an online survey panel, who live in Kanto region that around Tokyo and has a plan to visit Tohoku region during the summer holiday, and who agree to provide the survey data for academic research. And the requirements for the digital field experiments are people who are active users of the KDDI service application. That means who agree to receive service information from KDDI, and who live in the Kanto region and has a plan to visit Tohoku region during summer holiday, who agree to provide their location information for academic research. In these slides, I'm going to introduce the details of the intervention materials, the LPs. As I mentioned, we create 4 experiment conditions. The participants in the control group will receive no information from us. And for the LP1 condition, participants will receive typical traffic information, such as there might be very terrible traffic jam, and if you want to avoid that, you better to take a detour. And for the LP2 condition group, participants will receive both traffic information and one emotional content that you don't want the terrible traffic jam to ruin your trip. And in an LP3 condition, participants will receive the traffic information and also another emotional contents that you don't want your small children to suffer a lot in the horrible traffic jam. So the C and a D will activate people's feeling of empathy that might be effective to change their intention and behavior. In the four following slides, I'm going to introduce the results of the study. And the first slide showed the results of the change of intention tested by the pre-analyzed survey. And the results of the chi-square test showed that LPs, the LP1, 2, 3 increased intention of the shifting route. And for people who plan to travel with small children, the LP3 is more effective. And for people who are familiar with the destination, that the simple traffic information, the LP1 is more effective. We also examined some other user attributes such as residence, age, occupations, marriage situation, route decision maker or not, drive by self or not, but no significant results were confirmed. The second slide shows the results of the change of behavior that tested by the post-survey. The results of the chi-square test and a multiple comparison show that for people who reported using Tohoku Way in a pre-survey, LP3 has a significant stronger impact than control group on self-reported detour behavior. However, there was no significant differences between the LP1, 2, and 3 conditions. And the third slide shows the results of change of behavior by location information. The results of the chi-square test show a tendency that people in intervention conditions has higher detour rates, and during an outbound trip that people travel from Tokyo to Sendai, the LP3 group has the highest detour rate, but there was no significant differences were confirmed. In the fourth slide, I'm going to briefly introduce the estimation logic of the CDR location information. The CDR is a data record that produced by a smartphone or other telecom equipment that when a user receives or sends a message or a phone call, the smartphone will automatically take record that through which base station the information will receive or sent. So based on this record, we are able to estimate the route the user took. The steps are, firstly, we estimate the original route of the user, and in this study, we define it as the shortest route between the origin and the destination. After that, we use the CDR records to estimate the actual route the user took. And our logic is that if a user's original route was estimated as the Tohoku Way, and he or she took the Joban Way after checking the LP, we treat his or her action as a detour. And if you are interested in this estimation logic, please check the paper. And as many other experts working in the field of persuasive technology, we think to protect the participants is really important. So during the whole process of the experiment, the data collection, the data analyzed, and the presentation of the results, we follow closely the key ethical principle that proposed by Bryman and Bale. In the next 3 slides, I'm going to talk about the discussion of this paper. And the first slide show the results of the examination of hypothesis and a research question. In this research, we developed 2 hypotheses The first one is the traffic information without incentive increase participants' detour intention, and the second one is the emotional priming increase detour intention and behavior. According to the results of the analyzed survey and the field experiment, both the two hypotheses were supported. And the research question is if the intervention effects vary from user attributes. The answer is yes. For people who travel with small children, LP3, the emotional priming with a crying girl is more effective. And for people who are familiar with the destination, LP1, the simple traffic information is more effective. There are several limitations of the current research I should mention. Firstly, we didn't directly compare the effects of extrinsic and intrinsic motivation approach in this research. Also, secondly, we didn't confirm whether the emotional priming successfully activates the feeling of the empathy, and this empathy leads to a change of intention and the behavior. Thirdly, the sample size of the location information was not big enough. So this real limitation should be addressed in future research. I have two suggestions for future application of the insights of this paper, because the emotional persuasive strategy is an effective way to change detour intention and behavior. So it might be effective to add emotion contents to traffic information in future application. And also because the effects of emotional priming varies from user attributes. So when creating information, it's necessary to understand the audience and to personalize the information. Okay, thank you for listening. If you are interested in this paper and you have any question, please don't be hesitate to give me a message. Thank you so much for listening.